The boy was playing with his father with a water gun. But his father suddenly pointed a real gun at him. The sister sensed something was wrong, and quickly pushed her brother to the ground, watching her father shoot at them. The sister finally realized that her father had brought them to the desert to kill them. In order to survive, Ella took her brother and crawled away. Only then did she dare to look at her father. But by then, her father had already disappeared. The car had also been set on fire by their father. In order to survive, Ella went to search for supplies. They had to hurry back to the city, or they would surely die in this desert. By nightfall, they were already parched with thirst, since they had no water source. In order to conserve their strength, they endured their thirst and fell asleep. The next day, Ella took Andy and began their journey. In order to see the surrounding terrain clearly, they decided to climb to the top of the mountain to observe. They walked very carefully, and finally made it to the top. However, when they reached the summit, the scene before them left them despairing. They were surrounded by mountains, and they still had no water source. Now they had to find water. After walking for a long time without finding any water, the two lay down to rest and conserve their strength. After resting for a moment, they began walking again. At first, Andy was curious about his surroundings. He followed his sister as they walked. However, in this scorching desert, he quickly lost fluids from his body. As they passed a slope, Andy rolled down it. Seeing her brother lying on the ground unwilling to move, Ella had no choice but to pick up the dropped supplies. Then she carried her brother on her back and continued on their way. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Ella suddenly noticed green plants growing ahead. She thought she was hallucinating, until Andy also saw it. They finally walked over. There was an abundant water source here, and the trees were full of wild fruits. Andy immediately started drinking the water. Then he picked up the fallen wild fruits and ate them. Until she saw birds also eating these wild fruits, Ella realized that the fruits were not poisonous, so they had a hearty meal, and then lay down on the ground to sleep. However, what they didn't expect was that by the next day, the water had completely dried up. What was even more terrifying was that the two of them had been so preoccupied with drinking water that they hadn't stored any. To conserve their strength, they lay down on the ground. However, when they woke up, they discovered a wild man not far away. He was holding a long spear and hunting lizards on the ground.